Nestled among rolling hills heavy with morning mist, there lay a vineyard famed throughout the region. The vines stood tall, their leaves a vibrant green, supporting clusters of grapes so plump and dark they seemed to drink in the sunlight. Amid this tranquil setting lived a fox named Shadow, an agile creature with a sleek cinnamon coat and quick, watchful eyes. Shadow was known for his cunning and resourcefulness, never one to pass up an opportunity for an easy meal. He preferred to roam the borders of fields and orchards, always on the lookout for the ripest fruit or the unwatched henhouse. Yet beneath his confident stride, Shadow carried a streak of impatience and perhaps, ever so slightly, a touch of pride. One particularly golden afternoon, Shadow's wanderings carried him along the fence line of the great vineyard. As he trotted beneath the tangled arms of the grapevines, his nose twitched at a scent both sweet and intoxicating. Looking up, his keen eyes caught sight of a bounty. Hanging just beyond his reach were clusters of grapes, their skin practically glowing with promise. Some brushed the leaves, others swayed gently in the breeze, and all seemed to call out to him.
Those grapes are the finest I have seen all season. Surely I deserve at least a taste.
Shadow's mouth watered at the sight. He sized up the distance between himself and the nearest cluster, his tail flicking with anticipation. Without hesitation, he crouched low, gathered his energy, and leapt upward. But even at the height of his jump, his jaws closed on nothing but empty air. Unfazed, Shadow readied himself again, this time using a slight incline in the earth to his advantage. Yet, when he propelled himself skyward, he merely brushed the lowest leaves with the tips of his whiskers. Again and again, Shadow tried, sometimes scrambling at the bark with his sharp claws, sometimes bounding off stones and mounds of earth. With every leap, he felt the muscles in his legs strain, his heart pounding steadily in his chest. His focus narrowed to the lustrous grapes, each failed attempt stoking his determination. But as the minutes wore on, what began as a challenge grew into frustration. Sweat dampened the fur along Shadow's sides. His breathing turned heavy. Each jump grew weaker than the last, and the grapes seemed only to taunt him with their unyielding distance. At length, Shadow stopped, settling on his haunches beneath the vine, panting quietly, surveying his unreachable prize. A wave of irritation, then disappointment, pulsed through him. Shadow glanced nervously around, as if half expecting another animal to witness his failure. He bristled, feeling a heat in his chest that was not from exertion, but from wounded pride. He sat quietly, eyes fixed on the grapes he could not taste. Then he tipped his head back with a little snort of disdain and muttered aloud,
Bah! Worthless things, those grapes. From down here I can see their color. Too dark, too shadowed. They must be unripe. I'll bet they're bitter as nettles and sharp on the tongue. Why waste my energy on fruit that's surely not worth the trouble?
With his tail held high, as though the failed leaps had been merely a distraction, Shadow strode away from the vineyard. He did not so much as glance back at the gleaming clusters now shining in the late afternoon sun. Perhaps if he'd stayed long enough or tried a different approach, he would have tasted the sweetness he had first imagined. But now distance was his comfort, and a dismissive shrug his armor. The truth, known only to the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, was that the grapes were indeed ripe, full of sugar, fragrant and lush from the warmth of the season. But Shadow would never know. With each step away from the vineyard, the sourness was not in the fruit, but in his own heart. And so Shadow disappeared over the rise, his pride firmly intact, but his appetite unsatisfied. In this way, the vineyard remained peaceful, its treasures untouched by clever mouths or cleverer excuses. The lesson lingers, as gentle and persistent as the sun on turning leaves. Often, when what we desire seems out of reach, we soothe our disappointment by telling ourselves it was never worth wanting in the first place. Yet the truth sometimes lies just a little higher, waiting for us to try or to accept, with honesty and heart.